Part 14. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busrud. Chapter 132. Chapter 132 Killing, Part 2. In the end of October, the winter city can clearly feel the footsteps near winter. The bitter rain was underground for 3 days, and finally became snowflakes on the 4th day. On the 5th day, when the sun that had not been seen for a long time finally got rid of Woon's entanglement, and the winter city had become a silver-wrapped ice and snow world. But in the face of such a beautiful scenery, the residents in the winter city have no intention of appreciation. Because most people are about to break the food. Is the price of food still showing no signs of falling? In the study in the atrium of the Lion Rock Burg, the Duke of St. Hilda asked the firewood while asking. Behind the Duke, standing with a middle-aged man with a friendly and affection. He has a pair of blue eyes, and his wisdom is rolling inside. The white low ponytail was carefully sorted and blowing behind his head. His clothes are sophisticated but not gorgeous. There is a roll of old handtails on his waist and white gloves with his left hand. Down white. The people in the Lion Roar Castle call him a Bachelor of Deo. Although the title of Bachelor is not a title, it is also extremely precious. Only those who have studied at the Empire Bida Academy and successfully graduated can they be eligible to use the name of a bachelor's degree. The number of people who graduate from Bida College every year can come over with one hand. Therefore, each bachelor is the best alternative of court ministers, and it has naturally become the object of the major lords. No, the Bachelor of Dodon shook his head, and his expression was full of anxiety. In the past 3 months, the price of food in the north has risen more than 20 times. This is definitely not just a food apology caused by the invasion of the trolls at the beginning of this year. Instead, some people are deliberately hoarding food and controlling food prices. Some merchants who want money and not life Duke St. Hilda disdain, issue the Duke's order to the major lords in the north to let them manage the businessmen in the territory. If the price of food is still high in half a month, don't blame me to kill him by himself. Yesta and Scholar nodded. Is the military food of the Golden Legion enough? If there is no large-scale war next, it is still enough, the Bachelor of Dodon said here, hesitated, but I reminded again. However, the Duke, I still suggest that you purchase another batch of military food in case. Hearing this, the eyebrows of the Duke of St. Hilda twisted. He obviously also understands what Dorn's bachelor is worried. Famine is the most likely factor that causes the rebellion. So, Duke of St. Hilda nodded immediately, then go to buy a batch. Okay, but the current food prices of the entire empire are a bit high, so I am afraid this time. No matter how high the price is, buy me back. Yes. The Duke of St. Hilda threw a few firewoods in the fireplace. Looking at the flames that jumping constantly, he suddenly asked, where is the Black Army now? Dan scholarly looked at Duke of St. Hilda, but did not see any obvious emotions from above. The latest news just came from yesterday, the Black Cavalry has left the north and entered the semi-elf kingdom. Well, Duke of St. Hilda nodded, but did not make any instructions. The tumbling flame reflected in the deep eyes of the Duke, as if showing his heart that he was not calm. Seeing this, Dan Scholar was about to dismiss, but he heard a majestic and magnificent voice suddenly heard from outside the castle. Duke of St. Hilda, Ordo Waljan, Prince of the Giant Demon Empire, thinks that His Majesty Murdaf has revenge, and I will make a duel to you. Boom. A hot flame suddenly exploded in the fireplace. Duke Huoran stood up and looked out of the window. A giant warrior with a terrifying atmosphere was standing at the highest point of the Lion Roast Berg, looking down at the guards who were constantly gathered below. The Duke of St. Hilda, who was going out, quickly stepped forward to discourage the Duke. It is said that this Prince Orta has just been promoted to the Holy Realm. What about that? There was no sense of retreat on the Duke of St. Hilda's face. Did I hide in the Lion Roar Castle and let him go outside? After speaking, the Duke no longer cared for the scratching bachelor of Dodon and strode out. Half-Elf Kingdom, southwest border. The Black Cavalry is camp here. After drinking the broth of the Marquis of Garcia, wiped his mouth at will, and asked the Marquis around him, 30 miles ahead, you should pass the Shadow Canyon. Yes, Master Marquis. The Marquis of Jew was still respectful as ever. Even if he has now been blocked by the Marquis and swores loyalty to the Duke of St. Hilda. However, when the Marquis of Garcia summoned the Black Army and entered the semi-elf kingdom, the former Black Army Big Steward did not hesitate to help each other. Send someone to check it carefully, Marquis Garcia ordered. Marquis Dawn smiled, and he was a little disappointed in his words. Adult, this is the kingdom of half-elf, what danger can you be? Be cautious, always right. Okay, I will arrange it. Seeing the Marquis of Garcia insisted, Marquis Dawson quickly nodded. Nympho. After the rest was over, the army opened again. Garcia's Juju Mossing entered the Shadow Canyon, but the eyebrows were a little worried. Dawson, have you sent someone to check this canyon carefully? Lord Marquis, please rest assured I have sent someone to explore it completely, it is safe here. The Marquis of Garcia nodded and continued. But the more I go forward, the more I feel wrong in Garcia Marquis. The feeling of frightening and fleshy has been shrouded in him, as if something bad is about to happen. Stop forward, finally, Marquis Garcia ordered. Adult, what's wrong? We only walked halfway. Marquis Dawson stepped forward and asked. It's so quiet here. The Marquis of Garcia was cold, as if realizing something. The next moment, he decisively ordered, U-turn. After the army becomes a former army, the former army changes the army, the original road withdrew from the Shadow Canyon. Adult, Marquis Dawn was puzzled. You are. The Marquis of Garcia ignored him and insisted on letting the military officer go to pass the order immediately. Just as the Black Cavalry began to convert the formation, a loud noise suddenly came in the canyon. Boom! Marquis Huoran turned back and saw a dazzling flash of the cliffs on both sides of the rear. The horrible Olympic energy seemed to be as if the sky was in the sky, and the hills on both sides of the canyon were broken. Countless crushed boulder rolled down and smashed the Black Cavalry. Screaming, horsepower sounding the canyon instantly. The face of the Marquis of Garcia instantly became pale. At the moment when he stunned God, he suddenly felt a pain in his waist. As soon as he turned around, Marquis Garcia saw his once most trusted subordinates and was inserting a dagger into his back. Frank Dawson, you traitor! Faced with the anger's eyes of Marquis Garcia, Marquis of John of Garcia took a step back and smiled frankly. Sorry, Master Marquis, I may not be too careful when I first investigated this canyon. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 133. Chapter 133. Why? The Marquis of Garcia looked at the Marquis of Dawson, who had been made by the angry black labels who had been angry, and asked sadly. Marquis Dawn smiled and calmly, sorry, Master Marquis, you are very kind to me, and I don't want to betray you. However, in order to allow the dwarfs to fulfill the wish of the founding country, I must do this. The dwarf stands. There was a little flashing in the eyes of the Marquis of Garcia, and then he pointed to the Pure Day horse flag that suddenly rose above the canyon and asked, is this the promise given you by the St. Plus family? Marquis Dawn shook his head, no, actually, I don't know that the ambush in the Shadow Canyon turned out to be the army in the east. Who encouraged you to do this? Marquis Dawn laughed a little funny, Master Marquis, why don't you doubt the Duke of St. Hilda? After all, he is now the loyalty of my loyalty. The Marquis of Garcia was unmoved. No one knows my brother better than me, he will not be so stupid. Why, the Black Cavalry is now the biggest unstable factor in the north. Do you really don't doubt your brother wants to take this opportunity to eradicate the threat of the Black Army? A very complicated look appeared on the face of Eugenio Garcia, and sighed, "You will not understand." Marquis Dawn frowned, and then shook his head, "If you don't want to say it, however, the name of the adult who promises me, I can't disclose it yet." The Marquis of Garcia sneered, "If you think you don't say, I can't guess?" The former colorful tiger has now become a dog that dares to hide in the shadow. You still believe in their promises that even the family that can betray your own race? What a big joke. The face of Marquis Dawson changed, and it seemed to be deeply stabbed by Marquis of Garcia, and then shouted in anger. "So what? I don't believe them. Do you continue to believe your Saint Hilda family? Our dwarves have served you for thousands of years, but have you ever seen us? Perhaps the dwarves are just a joke in your eyes, but this is the highest mission for our ancestors to fight for it." The Marquis of Garcia hesitated, and some words still didn't say it. I saw that he waved his hand coldly and commanded, "Let him go." "Master Marquis," the angry officers were naturally surprised. "Let him go," Marquis Garcia emphasized again. "Yes." Marquis Dawn apparently did not expect that the other party had just let him go. The sound of the churches of Garcia's church sounded again. "Frank Dawson, I won't kill you today. Kill you, maybe you become the hero of the dwarf. So, I want to let you live. Live with the notoriousness of the betrayer. At the same time, what kind of joke is your dream of dwarf foundation? Get out." The face of the Marquis of Dawson was red, and finally left in the gaze of the Black Cavalry's disdainful eyes. At this time, the East soldiers were constantly coming above the canyon. The content was naturally required that the Black Cavalry immediately put down the weapon and surrendered out of the valley. The current situation of the Black Army is really bad. The narrow terrain of the Shadow Canyon squeezed the cavalry together and could not organize and charge at all. Moreover, the boulder just fell to cut off the Black Crane queue. Except for a small number of troops behind, most of the soldiers were stopped by the layers of boulder. If you move forward, don't think, the East Army must have set up a layer of obstacles in Gutu in front, and wait for the Black Cavalry to rush over to break the blood. Faced with such a desperate situation, Marquis Garcia still kept calm. I saw that he reached out to recruit a senior officer, whispered, "Log Knight, you go back now, turn over the boulders that stop the road, bring the troops behind, and lead them to return to the original road, rush out of the way out, rush out of this canyon." "Master Marquis, what about you?" "I can't go." Marquis Garcia pressed the wound in the waist. Although it had been simply bandaging, it continued to exude black pollutant blood. "No, Master Marquis, I escorted you to leave." Garcia's Juju stared at each other, stopped the words of the Log Cavaliers, and said firmly, "I will not leave the Black Army, but you have to leave. It doesn't matter if I die." The Cavaliers of Logan also said, but the Marquis of Garcia did not give him a chance and yelled, "Shut up, listen to me. After you led the post-army evacuation, do not entangle with the East Army or return to the north. Wet the Shadow Mountains north, and spend more time to reach Union City. After you get there, you find Angle Line and ask him a question. Should the Lord of the Northern Border be surnamed Saint Hilda? If he says it, you will be loyal to him. Otherwise, you will kill him and return to the Winter City, loyal to the Duke of Saint Hilda. Have you understood?" "Yes," Log Knight nodded quickly. He seemed to want to say something, but was stopped by the mighty eyes of the Marquis of Garcia. "Hurry up." The Cavaliers of the Log had no choice but to kneel on one knee, solemnly at the jaw of Garcia, and then left with red eyes. The Log Knights such as Marquis Garcia walked away before they convened their officers and asked, "Do you want to surrender?" "Never surrender." Everyone said loudly without hesitation. "Okay," there was a smile on the face of the Marquis of Garcia, "only the Black Army who died, and there was no surrender of the Black Army. It was rumored that the entire army, dismissed, move forward, kill out. Whine." In the harsh arms, the war suddenly broke out. As the northern border, and even the most elite army of the entire glorious empire, the Black Army is absolutely no shortage of courage to fight. Even if they have lost their biggest advantages at this time, the will to fight in the desperate situation is still eye-catching. Under the leadership of a group of officers, the Black Army soldiers all gave up the war horses, poured onto Nuuk, turned over the layers of obstacles set by the East Army, shouted the name of the Glory Master, and launched an attack to the enemy. Put an arrow. The arrow immediately became the protagonist in the air, and the darkness seemed to be shuttled like a dark cloud. However, such an arrow rain could not scare the Black Army at all. They seemed to be rushing out of the narrow Gutukau and rushing to the position of the East Army. Blood is free, and the corpses are messy. From the beginning, Tankau's war became terrible. The bodies of the Black Army general quickly raised at the mouth of the valley, forming a thrilling hill. The strong bloody smell floats in the air, which can be suffocated. Originally thought that the East Army, which was in charge of winning the coupon, began to be cold and trembling at this time. As if those who rushed over fearlessly, it was not humans at all. It's a group of crazy beasts. This chapter is finished. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 134. Chapter 134, First, ask for subscription. Unyu City, Half-Elf Palace. In the gloomy basement, Collins was biting a semi-elf's neck and couldn't hold it. The semi-elf was a ranger of the Ludd family who was sentenced to hanging for participating in the previous coup. However, on the day of execution, he was secretly a bag. The strangle was another dying death row, and he was taken to the basement of the palace and became a test product of Colin. Colin wants to know whether the gods and dependents of other races can also be converted into a blood descent except the cavaliers of the human family. However, Colin bit the ranger for a long time in the ranger of the Lutter family, and the first embarrassment ceremony in the expectation still did not happen. It seems that the heroes of the Elves ranger, which cannot be converted into blood. With a sigh, Colin pulled out his tiger teeth. After a while, the ranger of the Lutter family stood up again, and his eyes were dull, just like Zendaya, and it became Colin's blood slave. A third-order ranger slave. Not bad. Colin touched his chin and comforted himself. Take out a monkey mask to put on the ranger, and Colin smiled, well, from now on, your code is monkey. Monkey Ranger's eyes flashed, and it seemed to understand the meaning of Colin. Let the Monkey Ranger continue to stay in the basement to accompany the Fox Knight Zendaya, and Colin himself went up the stairs. This basement leads the King's study. Oh no, it should be called the Queen's study now. Since the old king died, Queen Aisha seemed to have changed her individual. The original lingering melancholy faded away, and replaced it was the charming style of blooming. Today, she was obviously carefully dressed. A red low-cut fine shoulder strap long skirt showed the fiber tanguin bumpy Meoman curve. The faint blush, bright lip gloss, and the embroidered gold decoration on the forehead make Aisha's beautiful face contour look more three-dimensional. The delicate and slender ears drooped the shiny diamond-setting earrings to set out the queen's new and clear noble temperament. Seeing the Colin who came out of the basement, Queen Aisha smiled at Yan Yan, and suddenly made the whole study brighter, a little brighter. Master Viscount, are you busy? Queen Aisha didn't ask Colin what was busy below. She was a very well-known woman. Colin walked in front of the window and saw a group of pastors and sacrifices gathered on the square outside the hall. He asked curiously, what are they doing? Queen Aisha walked to Colin and stood side by side with him, explaining, this is the tradition of the semi-elf royal family. After each king died, he would invite the pastor of the glorious church and the sacrifice of the Fate Church to pray for his soul. Clinton was a little speechless. What kind of ghost tradition is this? The pastor and sacrifice pray for the old king together. What about the embrace of his soul to return to the Lord of Glory? Still entering the Temple of Destiny? However, he didn't say much. After all, he would respect the traditional culture of other countries. Seeing Collins didn't speak, Queen Aisha explained another sentence. You said, treat the Modin family well, so I asked them to arrange the ceremony. You are right, Colin nodded. After all, your throne is given by the Modin family. You must show them enough kindness and gratitude to them to gather people's hearts. Okay, according to the plan, at the ceremony of tomorrow, I will grant the Duke of William Modin. However, there are still many members of the Modin family in the palace. Take it back. No, that's how you are too angry. Colin looked back at Queen Aisha, and said, moreover, it is not a good thing to make the Miller family alone balance opponents. I understand. Queen Aisha nodded. Even if Khalil bluntly said that she had no opinion on the fear and prevention of the Miller family, who had become the new semi-elf royal family. Colin looked at Queen Aisha, who was calm, and explained more. The result of a unique family is corruption and degeneration. Believe me, there is an opponent that the Miller family can be prosperous for a long time. I know, just like the northern border, because of the opponent of the trolls, the strength of the northern territory will be the empire. Without the opponent's east state, it can only be relying on the sky of the Nushui River block the enemy's footsteps. Hearing this, Colin smiled. Water River, it may not be able to keep the east. Of course, the Crystal River in the semi-elf kingdom, if necessary in the north, can be collected at any time. Colin shook his head and said, not in a hurry. Duke St. Hilda really wants that Crystal River, and asked the opinion of John of Jaw of Garcia. Queen Aisha sighed with a smile. You can take the opportunity to ask the Duke of St. Hilda again to marry Miss Villa. Presumably this time, he will not refuse you anymore. Colin nodded deeply. Obviously so much. At this time, he didn't know that the outside world was already changing, and the sea was vicissitudes. Oh yes, you can also start considering the question of the heir. Colin was still helping Queen Aisha's plan. You can choose one of the eyes from the children of the Miller family as a adopter son. Queen Aisha did not immediately agree. Suddenly a faint blush on her flawless face, whispered, I want to have a biological son then adopted sons. Colin frowned and looked at Queen Aisha in surprise. Queen Aisha also stared at Colin's eyes, while the soft body slowly leaned over. The ecstasy touch on the arm and the fragrant fragrance of the nose lingering made the heartbeat of Colin's heart beat a few beats. But he still kept a trace of calmness and discouraged. You must understand, I can't marry you. Of course I know. Queen Aisha's face was crimson, and his breathing gradually became rapid. Vera is the most suitable for your marriage. However, I can be your lover. Everyone in the world says that half-elf is the best lover. Don't you want to verify the authenticity of this sentence in person? Colin stared at the Queen's dim eyes and persuaded again, if you think clearly, the child born like this can only be an illegitimate child. I have thought about it. We can declare to the outside world that children are the remains of the old king. Hearing this, Colin's eyes were bright, and then he no longer suppressed his inner impulse, and held the slender waist of the Queen in front of him tightly. Queen Aisha couldn't help but exclaim that her body was soft, and she leaned in the wide mind of Colin. An unfamiliar feeling that has never had before made her heart like a deer. Through the thin long skirt, Clorin can also clearly feel the gentle and tender skin of Queen Aisha and the mature and plump body. This child will not be surnamed Medaiwan. Of course not, he will be surnamed Miller, and he will also become the next semi-elf king. Nympho. Vaguely, the prayer of the pastor and the sacrifice came from the window. May the Lord pity this respected king so that his soul can rest in peace. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 135. Chapter 135 To the North, 2nd, Ask for Subscription. On the forest trail, a team of about 50 people is slowly moving south. Near noon, the team stopped camp by a stream. "Brother, get up, it's time to have lunch." Anna shook Earl Evan a few times, but found that the other party still had no movement. She raised her eyebrows, pinched the pink fist, and smashed it on Earl's lower abdomen. Ah, vomit dash. Poor Evan was smashed out by the seemingly light punch. After turning over the river, Earl Evan gasped and looked back at her violent sister. "Make such a big temper early in the morning." "It's early, it's noon." Earl Evan waved his hand weakly. "What's the difference?" "Open meals, eat or eat." "Eat, eat," Earl Evan quickly struggled. He knew that if he didn't eat it now, his cruel sister would really make him hungry until the evening. After all, it was a member of the St+ family. Even in the wild, lunch was very rich, but the atmosphere was a little stagnant. After returning from Union City without success, everyone's mood could not be mentioned. Of course, Earl Evan. He is still the old-fashioned old, just take care of drinking all day. Just when everyone finished lunch and was ready to set off again, the whistle rider who went out to investigate the surrounding situation suddenly returned. Moreover, he brought one more person. "Earl, this is the messenger of the reporter of the Tianma Legion. The Tianma Corps is the army of the Santa+ family of the East China, and has always been in the hands of Duke of Saint+. However, in recent years, the Duke of St+ has also begun to intend to exercise his eldest son, Church of Vincent, and handed over the daily training of the Malaysian Corps to his hands." "Oh, why did you appear here?" Earl Ern's sleepy eyes turned bright for an instant, as if he woke up at once. Earl, the Marquis in the Shadow Canyon at this time, just led the Tianma army to play a game with the Black Army in the north and achieved victory. I want to spread this good news back to Belu City. The Black Army, still winning. Earl Evan's eyes were almost glaring, as if hearing something like a god of night. "Yes, Earl, we defeated the Black Army. Moreover, we also captured the Marquis of Garcia." "Really, Big Brother defeated the Marquis of Garcia? It's so amazing," Anna yelled excitedly. But Count Evan frowned. Although he is a little bit dealt with his elder brother, he is not jealous at this time. He just sensitively noticed wrong. How can his elder brother be very capable? Count Evan is very clear. Can he actually defeat the martial arts Marquis? How does this sound like a big lie? Where is the Tianma Corps now stationed? It's in Shadow Canyon. Let's go and see. Nympho. Over the Shadow Canyon, it is still shrouded in thick smoke. The stone walls on both sides of the canyon are also burnt traces. The crows and vultures flew into the valley over the canyon, and fell into the valley darkly, fighting the corpses everywhere with the beasts in the mountains. At a glance, the scene is terrible. When Earl Evan came here, the bloody gas coming from his face almost suffocated them. It wasn't until this time that Earl finally believed that his brother would really defeat the Black Army. "Evan, Anna, haha, you are here, hard all the way." As soon as he met, Marquis Verson greeted his younger brother and sister. The first heir of the Sanplas family is now at the time of being upset. The Black Army who defeated the Marquis of Garcia, Marquis Verson felt that he had already ranked among the top celebrities in the empire. "Brother, congratulations, after your father knows, he will be proud of you," Anna congratulated her brother sincerely. Earl Evan is different. He congratulated him first, and then immediately raised his own doubts. "Brother, how do you introduce the Church of Garcia to the Shadow Canyon? You don't need to control this anyway. In this battle, the Black Army is almost completely destroyed, and even the Marquis of Garcia has been captured by me. What else do you say in this record?" Of course, Earl Evan had something to say, and saw that he yelled angrily, "It is obviously a problem with the Black Cavaliers who can introduce the Marquis of Garcia into such a essence. But since you have a plan long ago, why not tell me in advance? I can cooperate with you in Union City to complete this plan better." You can even take this opportunity. Enough, Marquis Woodson interrupted his brother toughly, you have nothing to do in Union City, do you blame me, are you always self-proclaimed, how can you find my help? Earl Evan sighed secretly. He understood that the reason why his brother did not tell him these plans was he was afraid of himself and didn't want him to contribute. But this kind of fear not only made Earn chill, but also made him angry. Facing the threat of foreign enemies, the Sandplus family could not work together, but counted each other. With a deep breath, Earl Evan forcibly pressed the anger, and his tone gradually became indifferent. So, my good brother, how many people and horses do you bring? 200,000 troops. What about now, how much is left? Marquis Winson suffocated slightly, but then he said toughly, there are more than 100,000. What are the 10? How many? Earl Evan continued to ask. Along the way, he had already seen the scene where the wounded soldiers were exhausted and the atmosphere was depressed. This was simply not as if he had just won a victorious army. Marquis of Cherd Vincent Dodge, the statistics of specific casualties have not been completed, what do you ask about these? How can there be an immortal of the war, especially if a strong army such as the northern border is annihilated, how can it be possible not to pay the price? Earl Evan is confirmed this time. In the case of all the time, his brother even won a miserable victory. What has not been done yet? It is estimated that the damage of the 200,000 troops is almost half. In this kind of war loss, Earl Evan didn't know if it was time to lament the vulnerable to the East Army, or it was the terrible destructive power that the Black Cavalry broke out when facing despair. But no matter what, he confirmed one thing: his brother was used as a knife. Unfortunately, Marquis Winson is still self-proud, immersed in the false aura of victory, and did not realize this at all. Earl Evan was suddenly tired and asked, what about the Marquis of Garcia, can I see him? He was very injured and was still in a coma, otherwise Evan, you and Anna were responsible for escorting him back to Bailu City and handing it over to his father for disposal. In addition, there are a lot of wounded soldiers in this battle, and you are also responsible for led to return to Bailu City. What about you? The Count Evan suddenly had an ominous premonition. John of Wenson was tall on his chest, showing a pair of bamboo in his chest. I will go north to attack Union City, and hold the Elven Kingdom firmly in my hand. Earl Evan wanted to discourage it, but his words turned into, okay, brother, then I am waiting for you to return to your triumph. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 136. Chapter 136 Bad News, 3rd, Seek Subscription. Lord Kosuz, I didn't expect you to participate in this ambush. Earl Evan sent away his brother and the army in the north, and looked back at a middle-aged man wearing a white mage robe. Kuruis didn't seem to be willing to talk about this topic, but just responded lightly, I just coincides with its meeting. Of course, this kind of words could not lie to Earl Evan, but he did not ask too much. This time, the ambush against the Black Army obviously involved many forces. Earl Evan felt that he still had to go back and ask his father to know the truth of the matter. However, looking at the wounded soldiers gathered around, Earl Evan's brows could not help but frown. At this time, he also knew how fierce his brother paid for his brother to ambush the Black Army. The 200,000 people's Tianma Legion died 30,000 and wounded 50,000. In addition, 20,000 people even fled under the crazy counterattack of the Black Army. In other words, at that time, the Tianma Legion had signs of defeat. If it wasn't for the Black Army completely exhausted the last drop of blood, the victory of this ambush war would not necessarily belong to the East. In addition, 18 knights died, and even a 5th Order knight. This fierce price was exchanged for the annihilation of the Black Army. Earl Evan didn't know that it was not worth it. At this moment, he understood why his brother had to continue to lead the army north. The ambush of the time and local interests has become a miserable victory. If Marquis of Vincent returns to Bailu City in this way, it will definitely have to sweep the floor. Duke of St Plus will not easily let go of the son who hurts the Tianmo Legion for more than half. Earl Evan suddenly felt that this trip to the Silver Moon City of Marquis Wenson may not be smooth sailing. With a sigh, he didn't want to worry about his brother again, and turned back to the official. Let's start. Yes. Half-Elf Royal Palace. After the ceremony was over, the banquet officially started. Colin handled the semi-elf aristocracy for a while, and then sent them away, and came to the second floor along the rotating stairs. The cold night breeze blows into the empty palace, so that the quietness here is in sharp contrast with the lively downstairs. For a few steps forward, I saw the shadow that relied on the balcony. Tonight, Vera wore a pink rose hook flower skirt. The length of the skirt was about 10 centimeters on the knee, showing a pair of slender beautiful legs. I still saw you wearing stockings for the first time. Khalil stood behind Villa and said in an appreciation. Wyra turned back and said with a smile to Colin, "This was given to me, Queen Aisha. Because there is no chemical material such as nylon, stockings in this world are generally made of silk and cotton. The silk stockings produced by the semi-elf kingdom have always been welcomed by noble women." "Well, it is very suitable for you," Colin nodded while tasting. It seemed to be unable to stand the hot eyes of Clotter, and Vera stretched out his hand shyly to pull down his skirt. "But obviously, this is a little futile." The girl's green attitude accelerated the Colin heartbeat. Take a few steps. In the first few steps, standing side by side with Vera, Colin looked at the starlight of the night sky, and asked with a smile, "Why are you running here alone? Is the banquet below boring?" "It's a bit." Vera nodded, and looked a little bit embarrassed. Colin seemed to understand. "I miss home." Vera heard his words and turned to look at the man next to him. The warm eyes of Gloria made her gradually feel at ease, and laughed. "One thing. Rest assured, Marquis in Garcia has led the Black Cavalry to pick us up, and you can go back soon." Vera nodded, "Very well behaved." But the next sentence of Colin made the girl's heart almost jump out of her throat. "After returning, I asked the Duke to marry you." Wyra didn't speak and didn't dare to look at Colin, but her fair face climbed into Hungsia for a moment, extremely bright. I heard, the person who killed the previous king that night was killed by everyone to become the Wing Knight." Vera shyly shifted the topic. "Colin is funny and feels fun." "Really? Wing Knight, it sounds very good. Then do you know why the Cavaliers come out of the Batwing?" Wyra saw that Colin did not continue the topic, and he was relieved, and he was a little lost. "Maybe he has also repaired Druid." Colin decisively said the reason why Count Evan helped him think about it. "Druid, but isn't this occupation cut off for a long time?" "Who knows, maybe it's not completely cut off." Virajo nodded thoughtfully. "That Wing Knight is definitely a semi-elves after all. Druid needs the blood of the elves to cultivate." "Should be." Colin suddenly felt that Queen Aisha arranged his hand to deliberately guide this topic. In this way, everyone will look for this Wing Knight in the semi-elf without turning doubtful eyes to Colin. He can also use this Wing Knight to do something that is not convenient to do. At this moment, Colin suddenly heard the sound of light footsteps behind him. Looking back, I saw Queen Aisha standing there. "Angle Viscount, Miss Villa, did I not disturb the two?" "Of course not." "That's good. I want to notify the two. The Black Cavalry is about to reach Union City." "Really, is Uncle Garcia getting coming?" Villa screamed in surprise. "Yes, the Union Guard patrolling outside the city has encountered the outpost of the Black Cavalry and sent back to the signal." "Then let's go to the gate of the city," Colin said, walking out. Nympho. Although it was approaching late at night, the city's head of Union City was still shining brightly as daylight. Colin, Vera, and Queen Aisha stood side by side at the gate of the city, and the honor guard behind him also set off. After a while, the earth began to tremble slightly. In the sound of the rumbling horseshoe, a black thin line suddenly revealed from the darkness and continued to spread towards Union City. This familiar sense of oppression made Colin completely at ease. But it didn't take long for him to frown. Because he smelled a little blood. Moreover, over time, as the Black Cavalry continued to approach Union City, this bloody smell became more and more intense. Queen Aisha was also aware of bad, turned to look at Colin. "Angeli Viscount, the situation seems to be a bit wrong." Colin pursed his mouth without talking. Vera's face became a little bit stubborn, and she seemed to want to say something, but saw the sinking face, and she swallowed the words again. Finally, the Black Cavalry came to Union City and began to slow down. At this time, the crowds welcomed the appearance of this army, almost everyone with blood on them. And, the quantity is not right? The 50,000 Black Army is definitely not only the scale in front of him. An ominous hunch is shrouded in Colin's heart, making him cold. Under the doubtful gaze, a knight full of blood came out and came to the gate of the city. Dudu, Dura. The semi-elf honor fighter did not know how to play the welcome music, but it was stopped by Queen Aisha's look back. The log knight came to Colin and others, turned over and dismissed, took off the helmet, kneeled on one knee, and said with a choking tone. "Miss Willa, Angleforals, the main force of the Black Cavalry encountered ambush in the Shadow Canyon, and the Marquis of Garcia was deeply siege." Row. This bad news suddenly made Colin dizzy for a while, and couldn't believe his ears. The Marquis of Garcia has encountered ambush? How can this be? And is it like Shadow Canyon? With the cautious combat style of the Marquis of Garcia, how could it not be careful not to investigate the risk of cavalry in a cavalry? Forced himself to calm down, Colin asked, "How did you encounter ambush? Why didn't you detect it in advance?" Marquis Dawn rebelled. He deceived the Marquis of Garcia and introduced the Black Army into the enemy's trap. Frank Dawson, the image of a dwarf suddenly appeared in Colin's brain. At the same time, the thoughts could no longer suppress. It is this Marquis of Matson who was ordered by the Duke of St. Hill, and did he betray the Marquis of Garcia? If this is the case, I am afraid that from the beginning, the Duke of St. Hilda is calculating himself, calculating the Marquis of Garcia. With Union City as a bait, it is to completely remove the unstable factor of the Black Army, so that there will be no murmur in the north. How many people are there now? 8,000. 8,000, Colin's face was heavy. Colin, uncle, Vera was also panicked at this time. Colin held Vera's little hand, both to her, but also to the log knight, solemnly promised. "Don't worry, I will revenge for the Black Army." This chapter is finished. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 137. Chapter 137 Loyalty, 4th, Ask for Subscription. When the first ray of the early morning was in the head of Union City, Colin still did not fall asleep. Just after listening to the Log Cavaliers talked about the situation when the Black Rider encountered the situation, Colin now had no intention to sleep. Wyra, who was worried about his uncle's safety, just cried for a while, and finally couldn't help sleeping. Colin put on a blanket on Vera lightly, and then signaled that the log knight followed him. The two came to the corridor outside the temple, and a half-elf's maid carefully stepped forward and asked, "Master Viscount, Master Cavaliers, do you need breakfast?" Colin has no appetite now, but if you look at the log knight, I am afraid that for some time, he hasn't had a good meal for a while, so he nodded, "Give 2 parts." Soon, the maid came over with 2 dining plates. "Just put it on the ground." Colin sat down on the steps of the corridor without wanting to disturb Villa's sleep. At this time, the Roger Cavaliers would not care about these at this time, so they sat next to Colin. Seeing this, the maid had to place the plate on the steps and then retreat quickly. Colin asked again, and Colin asked again, so, Marquis Dowson didn't say this ambush of who planned? No. But the Marquis of Garcia once said, wasn't it planned by Duke St. Hilda? Yes. Clinton was suddenly confused again. Originally, he was convinced that this was the conspiracy of the Duke of St. Hilda from beginning to end, but he did not expect that he was denied this possibility by Marquis in Garcia. Why does the Marquis of Garcia feel that his brother will not count him? The Black Army in his hands has long been the biggest instability in the north. Colin had been puzzled before, why did the Duke of St. Hilda plan to make a semi-elven kingdom and even the east? If the semi-elf kingdom is just a bait, the real goal is actually the Black Army, then everything will be explained. However, why did the Marquis of Garcia believe that his brother was not behind the scenes of the ambush incident? If it weren't for the Duke of St. Hilda, who would be the John of Dowson? It seems that Colin's doubts are seen, and the Cavaliers of Log asked, Master Viscount, do you suspect that this ambush planned by the Duke of St. Hilda? Colin was silent for a moment, but shook his head, now wanting to come. It seems unlikely that this ambush is planned by the Duke of St. Hilda. Why? The Duke of St. Hilda allows Marquis to betray the Marquis of Garcia. I don't doubt this, but how did he say that the East Truers cooperated with him to set up a shadow canyon? You know, the Northern Realm has obviously touched the sensitive nerves of the East. I am afraid that the Sanplas family has long been secretly guarding the Duke of St. Hilda. How can they cooperate with his plan to help him clear the Black Army? They are not worried that the Shadow Canyon is actually a trap that the Duke of St. Hilda and his brother gives them to them. After listening to Colin's analysis, Cavaliers of Logjels nodded. However, when his eyes turned around, he asked in a seemingly casual tone, but if it is really a boss of the Black Cavalry planned by the Duke of St. Hilda, is it still valid for the revenge you promised before? Colin was still thinking about who the Black Hand may be behind the scenes, and did not care too much about the question of the log, so he answered casually. Of course valid. If the Duke of St. Hilda really did such a kind of anger and resentment, then I would definitely ask for justice for the Marquis of Garcia. Then will you kill the Duke? Colin looked up at the Log Knight, and suddenly realized that this was actually a good opportunity to conquer this Black Truer army. 8,000 Black Cavalry. It is definitely a military force that cannot be ignored. Therefore, he answered very simply, if the Marquis of Garcia died in this ambush, then I would definitely try to let the Black Hands behind the scenes compensate, even if this person is the Duke of St. Hilda. Log's eyes flashed, and it seemed to be excited, and seemed hesitant. After a while, he asked again, after the Duke of St. Hilda's death, the position of the Lord of the North, who do you think is appropriate? Colin frowned and felt that the Log Knight was a little strange. How do he care about this kind of problem? According to the judgment of the Marquis of Garcia and the reasoning of the Colin just now, the Duke of St. Hilda has basically been washed away. Why did this Log Knight begin to care about what happened after killing the Duke? Looking at the opponent's serious look, Colin thought that the Log Knight was too stimulated to become anomalous. I think Miss Villa is very suitable for the position of inheriting the Lord of the North, Colin said directly this time. Moreover, there is still the idea of testing the Log Knight. Hearing the answer like Colin, the Log Knight seemed to be relieved and laughed, I think so too. This attitude immediately realized that the Log Knight also knew the true relationship between the Marquis and the Marquis of the Gagsia. Otherwise, in accordance with the rules of inheritance of the aristocracy, the third son of the Duke Joyce's inheritance is in front of Villa. Therefore, this reaction of the Log Knight can only show that he also knows Vera's true identity. As a knight of the Marquis of Garcia, of course, he is more inclined to Vera. However, this is not too surprised. On the occasion of Marquis in Garcia, the Log Knight led the post troops to siege, which obviously shows that the Roger Cavaliers is a confidant that he is deeply trusted, and it is normal to know that Vera's true identity is. Just when Colin was about to test the log knight knows who Willa's mother was, the Rag Knight strode in and reported. Master Viscount, there is news from the Shadow Canyon. How? The Cavaliers of Log couldn't help asking. The Black Army in the canyon was overwhelmed, and the Marquis of Garcia was captured by the Malaysian Corps. Hearing such news, the eyes of the Log Knight were instantly red. He held his sword's right hand with blue tendons and rang his horn handle. Colin sighed and comforted, although this is not good news, it is not the worst, at least after all, Marquis of Garcia is still alive, and we still have the opportunity to redeem him back. Yes, the Cavaliers of Log raised his head, and a hint of hope was burning in his eyes. The Cavaliers of the Rigo touched the bald head and said, Adult, in fact, there is a bad news over the Shadow Canyon. What other bad news? The East Legion, which annihilated the Black Cavalry, is currently coming to Union City. It is expected that it will arrive in about 5 days. Colin stared straight and asked quickly, how many people do they have? About 100,000. 100,000, Colin was a little worried. However, watching the ardent Log Cavaliers next to him, then think about the careful guidance of the Marquis of Garcia at the beginning, and that it was difficult to incorporate the semi-elf kingdom in his control. What are you afraid of? Then fight. They even dared to come to Union City. Wouldn't this be a chance to get revenge from the door? Okay, the Log Crush responded loudly, and then stopped hesitating, kneeling on one knee, and worshipping his sword in front of Colin. Dear Angeli, I am willing to swear loyalty to you here, as long as you are willing to revenge for the Marquis of Garcia. The 8,000 Black Cavalry will be driven by you. Colin's eyes brightened, and when he took the sword of the Log Knight, he ordered a bit on his shoulder. I, Colin Angle, accept your loyalty. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 138. Chapter 138 Messenger, 5th, Seeking Subscription. I heard that the King of His Majesty was unfortunately killed, and the Marquis of Wenson was deeply regretful. However, Master Marquis also believes that under your Her Majesty, your unification, the semi-elf kingdom will definitely have a more bright future. Therefore, Lord Marquis ordered me to bring a congratulatory gift to my Majesty to respect. The Eastern messenger is a middle-aged man about 40 years old, with fair complexion and a short beard. The aristocratic dress on his body shows his vulgarites. The Vonanchal Austin put a delicate small box on the table in front of Queen Aisha, and then returned respectfully. Although his etiquette was impeccable, the kind of high-rise attitude was not too concealed. However, this is also the consistent attitude of the imperial messenger in the semi-elves kingdom, and Queen Aisha has long been used to it. Marquis Wenson is attentive. Queen Aisha laughed and expressed his gratitude, and at the same time, the maid next to him opened the box. The maid opened the box and found that there was a banner inside, so she took it out and expanded. It was a military flag. The Black Cavalry's banner. There is still blood on the flag, and there are traces of burnt in the lower left corner. Even if it was just a banner, it also made Queen Aisha seem to see the terrible scene of the Shadow Canyon. At the same time, anger raised from her heart. Of course, Queen Aisha did not have much emotion to the Black Army, but she was completely angry by the pride of the East Messenger. The other party sent this flag over, and it was clearly talking. The army in the north has been destroyed by us, and if we know, we will quickly follow our east. The Viscount Austin was still the expression, with an unspeakable smile on his face, his eyes were unwilling, and he looked at Queen Aisha focused on. Queen Aisha's face suddenly bloomed with a bright smile. From the beginning, she had felt malicious from the East Messenger. At this moment, she stared seriously and admired. I did not expect Marquis Wenson to be young, and his military accomplishments were so high even the famous black troops were defeated in his hands. It's a hero. Viscount Austin smiled with a stubbornness. His Majesty the Queen has been reputable. Lord Marquis is also worried that the Black Army will pose a threat to Union City, and then he sends a halfway to ambush. Unexpectedly, it was easy to win in one battle. It seems that the so-called wars of the invincible Black Army are nothing more than a fame. The smile on Queen Aisha's face became more gorgeous, as if with some kind of hearty charm. The Viscount Austin quickly lowered her head and didn't dare to look at it. On behalf of all the semi-elf people, I thank the Jol of Wenson for their assistance to help Union City relieve the threat of the Black Army. To express your gratitude to Lord Marquis, if you need any need for the Marquis, please be instructed. Viscount Austin raised his brows and smiled unchanged. He solemnly, there are two things, and Lord Marquis really wants to get His Majesty of the Queen. Please say. First of all, the invasion of the semi-elf kingdom in the north is really a rude trample on the agreement between the two countries. The Duke of St. will report to His Majesty the Emperor and make a due punishment for the St. Hilda family. I heard that this incident was caused by the marriage of Miss Villa, so we also hope that His Majesty Queen can hand over Miss Villa. Then we will be sent to Yolong City and accept the trial of His Majesty the Emperor. Secondly, although the Marquis defeated the Black Army this time, it is inevitable that the evil forces in the future will threaten Union City. Therefore, in order to better help Her Majesty the Queen to guard the semi-elf people, and for the friendship between the East and the semi-elf kingdom, Master Marquis is willing to take over the defense of Union City and become the guardian of the semi-elf kingdom. Queen Aisha quietly listened to the request of the Viscount Austin, and found that the conditions of Dongjing this time are actually 2-1 is to hand over Vera, and the other is the garrison in Union City. As long as Queen Aisha promised these two conditions, it also represents the control of the semi-elven kingdom into the control of the East. Austin dared to make such a request. Obviously there was no fear. In his opinion, with the overthrow of the Black Army, Queen Aisha had lost foreign aid. Not to mention that Union City has just encountered a military coup. Even if the Union Guard is still intact, do they dare to fight the 100,000 troops in the east? Queen Aisha did not dare to resist, but just said something embarrassed. Penalty, you may not know that Miss Villa had encountered an assassination in the palace. Although it was rescued and restored her life, she was still seriously injured and I was afraid I couldn't travel. That's it. Austin smiled and laughed, and I didn't know if I saw the Queen's entrusted resignation. Please rest assured this time, when the Jol Vincent was expelled, he also invited a bishop. When you come to Union City, you will definitely give Miss Varam's best treatment. Then I'm relieved. Queen Aisha smiled. So, do you have any opinions on the requirements of Lord Marquis? Viapecture continued to ask. Obviously, he forced Queen Aisha to show his attitude. Queen Aisha's heart was angry, but on the surface, she still smiled. I have no other opinion. Marquis Winsen thinks for the semi-elf kingdom. I am extremely grateful. When the Viscount of Austin heard this, the fake smile on his face finally brought a hint of sincerity. His Majesty, you have made the right choice for the elf kingdom. The high-spirited attitude of the opponent made Queen Aisha completely lose his interest in the conversation, so he got up and laughed. The Viscount will travel long distances. It must be tiring. Let's take a break first. I will set up a banquet for you at night. Thank you, Queen. After the Viscount Austin left, Queen Aisha sent away the servants in the hall again. Later, Colin turned from behind the curtain. Are these people in Dongjing have always been so arrogant? He sat down on the throne politely, mocking in his mouth. Queen Aisha smiled charmingly and sat straight on the legs of Colin. A pair of jade arms wrapped around Colin's neck. It was half spoiled and half vented. There is no way, a small country like a half-elves, facing the imperial messenger, can only bow his knees like this. Colin held Queen Aisha's plump body in his arms and took a deep breath. The fragrance in his nose calmed his irritable heart. Don't be afraid, that Vincent is just a villain who is a conspiracy and tricks. See how I clean up him. Queen Aisha posted a pretty face in Colin's arms, as if listening to his heartbeat. Kalinma was holding the queen's smooth back, and suddenly said, "By the way, the Black Riders' army was not mentioned in the demands of the East messenger enter the EU city." Well, the other party should not know yet. However, the darkness of the Black Cavalry entered the city is so great, and the semi-elf aristocracy basically knows this news can't hide how long it will be. That's right, but how to leak this news to Vacus of Austin? We can make a little article. Have you had a good idea again? Yes, but that's not the point now. So what is the current focus? As soon as Queen Aisha's question was exported, she found that her mouth was blocked. Nympho. The semi-elf throne that carries thousands of years of power, at this time, is ushered in a more primitive and fierce battle. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 139. Chapter 139 Banquet, 6th more, seek subscription. Colin, can I not attend the banquet tonight? While helping the man's collar, Vera asked. At this time, Colin had changed a standard black nobly yantail. He hugged Vera and kissed gently on her tender red lips. Yes, now you are a serious wounded person, and of course you can't attend the banquet. Okay, Vera pouted, seemed to be aggrieved, but then she confused, but I have appeared in front of the semi-elf aristocracy many times before, they must know that I am hurt. Fool, sometimes lying is not to convince the other party. What else can you do? In order to give each other a step that is unprepared. The doubts in Vera's eyes did not decrease. Colin rubbed the girl's hair with a smile. Dongjing knows that we are lying, we also know that Dongjing knows that we are lying, but as long as Yunyu City is still in our hands, they can only treat our lies as facts. Wyra understood this time, and then worried, what if the East Army captured Yunyu City? In that case, no matter what lie they say, it will be a fact, Colin said faintly, and then his tone became firm again. But if you are there, don't want to attack Yunyu City. Well, I believe you. Nympho. The night fell, and the half-elf royal palace became lively again. Although just experienced a tragic military coup, the enthusiasm of the semi-elf nobles did not diminish the banquet. Queen Aisha wearing a purple rose pattern evening dress tonight reveals a smooth and white back. She was very tall, and she stepped on a pair of silver high-heeled shoes on her feet. The whole person seemed to be an arrogant white swan, so that all the men present felt self-confident and did not dare to stand beside her. After dressing up carefully, Queen Aisha, who seemed to be glorious, gave a toast first, and said with a loud saying, "Everyone, please allow me to introduce a Viscount of Austin from the east of the glorious empire." Warm applause immediately rose. Viscount Austin took the surroundings and leaned back to the salute elegantly and calmly. Subsequently, the East Venture also took a cup of champagne and said loudly, "This time I came to Gui's Hung on behalf of Marquis, for the peace of Yunyu City, and the friendship between the East and Semi-Elf Kingdom. Of course, it was to see the style of Queen Aisha. Let us centered together, I wish the peace friendship, and I wish His Majesty the youth of youth forever. I wish you friendly. I wish your youth forever." Nympho. The atmosphere of the banquet gradually became warm. Queen Aisha led Colin to the Austin, and introduced it with a smile. Please allow me to introduce, this is the Angle Viscounts from the north. Both are the Viscounts of the Empire, and there will be many common languages. Viscount Austin stretched out his hand with a smile. Of course, I have been named Angle Line for a long time. Colin also shook hands with the other party with a smile and said, "Oh, I don't know what kind of reputation you hear. Of course it is a good reputation. It is said that you once fought with the Marquis of Garcia to fight the Sky Ice Field and defeated the 300,000 trunks. Oh, that's all the credit of the Marquis of Garcia, I just coincided with it. You are too humble." The Viscount's smile suddenly became a little ambiguous. In addition, I heard that you have a close relationship with Miss Willa. Miss Villa is indeed the object of admiration. Colin nodded, admitted, after all, he had married, and it was boring to deny it again. I don't know if Miss Willa suffers this time is not serious. It is indeed a bit serious, although there is no worries of life, it also needs to stay in bed for a long time. Hey, I heard that Miss Vera was injured before he was assassinated. I wonder who was so bold. The anger on Forless Austin's face was the same as true. It's Prince Toop. Prince Toop, Aston was shocked. Isn't that Miss Willa's fiancé? Yes. Why? Because he learned that I was Vera's first man. In the face of Colin's frankness, Austin's Viscount did not know what to say for a while. Before he came, he certainly heard what happened to the Yin Moon City. I also know that the cause of everything is actually derived from the inspection that happened in the palace of the Queen. However, like everyone, the Viscount Austin also felt that Prince Tope's sudden killing was too strange. Now, when I hear Collins personally acknowledged his underground relationship with Vera, the doubts in his heart became stronger. Angle Viscount, forgive me, it is really difficult for me to believe that Prince Tope learned about the private sentiment between you and Villa, and it was killed this reason, too far-fetched. Colin smiled, and suddenly lowered his voice, then do you want to know what the real reason for Tope's killing is? What? Viscount Austin leaned forward involuntarily and whispered. That's because, Colin got into the ear of Viscount Austin. Tope was instructed by the Duke of St. Hilda, so that Vera would be killed in the palace of Half-Elf. This, how is this? Viscount Austin widened his eyes and couldn't believe it. But looking at Khalil's solemn expression and the eyes of Queen Aisha's approval, Urdres Austin sank and carefully pondered. Suddenly, this may be true. So, the Duke of St. Hilda is an excuse to obtain the semi-elf kingdom? Yes, Khalil's face was painful. I really didn't want to see Miss Willa the fragrant jade, and then she rescued her. It turns out, Austin, then I felt that the whole thing could be explained. But then he wondered why did Colin tell him? It seemed to see the doubts of the Viscounts of Austin, and Colin once again said, Viscount, I tell you that I hope you can understand that I now rescued Way because of the violation of the will of the Duke St. Hilda Miss Law. And the Black Army, also unfortunately destroyed in the Shadow Canyon. Therefore, the plan of the Duke of St. Hilda is basically a complete failure. I worry. Are you worried that the Duke of St. Hilda will be angry with you? Viscount Austin felt that he finally understood the plan of Colin. Yes, Colin nodded again and again. After hesitating, he whispered again, I don't know if you can ask you to help me bring a word to Marquis Wenson. Please say. Colin gritted his teeth, as if he finally made up his mind. I want to be loyal to the ST Plus family. This chapter is finished. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busroot. Chapter 140. Chapter 140 told, 7th, Seeking Subscribe. Viscount's eyes have been on the Colin for a long time. But soon, he showed a sincere smile. Angeline, you made a correct decision. Duke of St. Plus is a generous and kind lord, and it is the object worthy of your loyalty. Colin seemed to be relieved, quickly holding Viscount Austin, and kept expressing his gratitude. Viscount Austin looked at the sudden attitude of Colin, and it was inevitable that he would be disdainful. After dealing with a few more sentences, Viscount Austin sent off the Colin. When he came to the buffet table, Viscount Austin sent several exquisite desserts into your mouth, and then saw a familiar figure passing by. Prince William, oh, sorry, it should be the Duke of Maidin. William, who had just been named Queen Aisha as Duke Maidin, quickly smiled and saluted Viscount Austin. The two had seen a few faces, and they were acquaintances. Vacus, welcome to Union City again. Haha, I can be regarded as the old guests of Union City just every time. The changes here are a bit big, especially this time. Duke Meadwin's face showed a little embarrassing expression. The changes in Union City have been a bit too big these days. He also changed from Prince William to Duke of Meadin today. It's a bit big, but you rest assured we are still as enthusiastic as the past. Oh, in this case, in my room tonight, there will be a beautiful semi-elf female slave as before. Certainly. The two smiled each other, and they were ambiguous. It seems that you are too good now, Venter Austin said with a smile. It's okay. A little unnatural appeared on Duke Meadwin's face. Austin turned his glass in his hand and suddenly said coldly, William, we are an old friend, you tell me the truth, are you really willing to be a duke? Duke Meadwin shocked in his heart, and then glanced around immediately, and when no one noticed the two of them, he was relieved. Viscount, how can I be unwilling? Her Majesty is kind to the Meadin family. Austin smiled and dismissed, what queen? Their Miller family is just a usurper. When is they qualified to become a semi-elf royal family? Duke Meadwin is even more embarrassing. Because the words of Austin, they scolded them. After all, for the former Semito royal family in the Sevo family, their Meadwin family is also usurped. Looking at the silent Duke of Meadin, Austin's heart had a care in his heart. He understood that William was unwilling, but he did not dare to resist the pressure in the Miller family and the North. So he felt that he should stimulate each other. William, Marquis Wenson told me before coming that the Emperor family is the best partner of the St Plus family, and the only family who is eligible to control the semi-elf kingdom. Duke Huoran looked up at the Duke of Meadwin, looking at Viscount Austin, and opened his mouth to say something, but a few times, he couldn't say it. Austin's heart was disappointed. He knew that William was cowardly and stupid, but the Meadin family now reached this field. This guy was still old. William, tell me, do you want to recapture the throne of the Meadin family? In other words, Duke Meadwin can no longer avoid it. I saw him finally nodded and made a mosquito-like sound, think. Very good, the corner of Viscount Austin raised slightly, so, you tell me, what happened in the Queen Palace? Duke Meadwin was about to know himself, all of which told him 150-1. Austin was a little disappointed after hearing. Because Duke Meadwin tells the version he heard from Earl Evan, it is not as convincing as Colin's version. What kind of person do you think Angelia is? Austin asked again. Smart, strong, there is a means, even Her Majesty Aisha obeyed him. Oh, is it so? Yes, in fact, it was the Angle energy that asked me to give the throne to Aisha. The Viscount Austin rubbed his beard and frowned suddenly, so, the Viscount Angreer is now in control over Union City. Yes, it can even be said that he is the real owner of Union City. Many semi-elf aristocracy knows that finding His Majesty of the Queen may not be able to solve it, but as long as Angler nods, there will be no obstacles. Really, Viscount Austin's face became heavier. Why did Queen Aisha be so obedient to him? Didn't she know that the Black Corporation had been wiped out in the Shadow Canyon? Of course I know, but, Duke Meadwin hesitated in words. Viscount Austin stretched out his right hand, pressed on the other side of the other side, and squeezed it hard, saying, William, you can rest assured the 100,000 troops of Church of Vincent are about to arrive in Union City. We will be your solid backing, so you don't have to be afraid. Hearing the 100,000 troops, Duke Meadwin's face changed. After a moment, he seemed to finally make up his mind and whispered, in fact, there is a Black Rider forces to Union City be the real owner of the city. The Viscount Austin suddenly widened his eyes and asked in a hurry, Black Rider forces, how do they come, how many people? It is said that it is around from the north of the Shadow Mountains, with a total of 8,000 people. Austin narrowed his eyes and was a little confused. In fact, he knew that some of the Black Army was not blocked in the Shadow Canyon, but was successfully escaped. However, he thought that the Black Riders' residue would definitely flee back to the north. Unexpectedly, they still came to Union City. Moreover, Colin had never mentioned the existence of this army just now. Thinking of this, Austin Voningen looked up at the direction where Colin was. There, Khalil and Queen Aisha laughed, and became quite intimate. Loyalty to the East, Viscount Austin said with a smile, and said, "But Angle Viscount, your loyalty seems to be reserved." "Viscount, what are you saying?" Duke Moden asked carefully. Nothing. Austin's eyes retracted and stopped governing Collins, but said to Duke Moden, "William, believe me, as long as the army of the Marquis arrived in Union City, all conspiracy tricks were strange tricks. The smoke disappears and your Maedwin family will also re-enter the throne of the king's throne." Duke Maedwin flushed her face excitedly, suppressed her inner ecstasy, and whose whim? "Thank you for the grace of the Santa Polos family." This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 141. Chapter 141 Suspicious, 8th, seek subscription. The night was deeper, and the banquet in the palace finally ended. After sending away the guests, Queen Aisha looked back and saw Duke Maedwin standing in the shadow with a restrained look. "Your Majesty, I do it as required by you." Queen Aisha smiled, "Very good. Then, Charlie him." "William, you are my son, then Charlie is naturally my grandson, but this grandson is too naughty. Of course, I need to help you discipline it these days. Charlie lives with me, you don't have to worry." Queen Aisha called the scene of William, who was older than her, was very weird, but this was still true. Duke Maedwin's face was bitter, but he did not dare to violate Queen Aisha's will. "I didn't expect you to be a grandma," Colin came over and teased. Queen Aisha glanced at Colin, and said, "Are you having abandoned me?" "How, I even doubt that the elf blood on your body is too strong. I am afraid it will become longevity." Queen Aisha giggled and shook her head. The semi-elf could not be a longevity. Later, she converged with a smile and asked some worries, "Is it really appropriate to let William to do such a thing? He actually is not smart." "Because he is not smart, I chose him," Colin said with a smile. "The lies of an honest man are like a fishbone in the rice. It is difficult to detect, but he can pierce your throat inadvertently." Queen Aisha had a delicate taste for a while before she really nodded. "Well, it really makes sense. What should we do below?" "Of course, the gate is open below, and Jill Vincent has entered the Union City." 3 days later, the Viscount Austin left Union City and came to Hongfeng Manor. At this time, the Hongfeng Manor has been requisitioned by the East Army, and it has become a huge barracks. Voice of Austin walked into the manor all the way, and saw Marquis, who was enjoying dinner in the restaurant. "Master Marquis." "Austin, work hard all the way, eat first." "Yes." The two were quickly used to run out of dinner without losing elegance, and then Marquis Wenson asked, "Union City, what about the situation?" "On the surface, everything goes well. Queen Aisha has agreed with 2 conditions, and even Angle Viscount also expressed his willingness to be loyal to East." "Oh," Marquis Woodson raised an eyebrow, "why did the Forels of Angle betrayed the North?" According to him, it was because he discovered that the Duke of St. Hilda had sacrificed Vera as an excuse for entering the semi-elf kingdom, and Vera was the beloved person of the Viscount Angle, so he was right. Duke of St. Hilda is resentful. "It's because of a woman?" Marquis Wenson asked skeptically. "Yes, in addition, Villa did not die in the palace of the semi-elf this time, and it was also the credit of Angle. Obviously, he also worried that this would anger the Duke of St. Hilda, and even the failure of the North in the semi-elf kingdom crimes guilty of him." "Well, this is quite reasonable," Winson groaned, but then asked again, "Why do you still say all the best on the surface?" "Because I found that Angeli Forel still concealed us." "What did he conceal?" "Hidden at this time, there are still 8,000 Black Riders. The Black Army, Marquis Wenson sat straight and his face was dignified. Although the main force of the Black Army has just been destroyed, the Marquis of Chert Vincent has a psychological shadow for this terrible northern border army. In the case of the Shadow Canyon, the Tianma Corps had paid almost twice the cost of casualties before winning the ambush war. For such a result, Marquis Wenson did not have the joy of victory at all, and some were deep humiliation and fear. Therefore, he chose to continue his army to go north. He wanted to win a hearty victory in Union City to wash the shame of the Shadow Canyon. But I did not expect that there was still a Black Rider residue in Union City. Who told you this news? William Madin. Do you believe him? I know William, he should not lie to me. Moreover, I also asked several other semi-elf aristocrats with good dongjing. They all said that they had seen a black club to enter the Union City. What about Queen Aisha, what is her attitude? I am afraid she is a puppet supported by the North. What she said may not be believed. Chuan nodded and frowned. So, they just gave yield to us and want to paralyze us. Should be. Oh, it's really arrogant. Marquis of Wenson was a little embarrassed. How many troops are there in Union City now? William told me that the Silver Moon Guard of the Semi-Elven Kingdom has just experienced a coup and a heavy loss, although it was urgently supplemented by a group of recruits and recovered the establishment of 30,000 people. Again, there are only 20,000 people. In addition, it is the disability of the 8,000-1,000 horses. The Union Guard is not afraid. Marquis Woodson waved his hand, his face was disdainful. But then, his tone became solemn again. The key is the 8,000 black cavalry. Viscount Austin nodded and agreed. Yes, William also told me that the 8,000 Black Bolt is actually not in Union City. Oh, where are they? Viscount Austin came to the military map hanging on the wall and pointed to a place on it. They are hidden on this hill in the southwest of Union City. Chu Chu Church squinted his eyes and looked at it for a long time, and suddenly laughed. It seems that the North is ready to seduce us into Union City, and then control us while we are not prepared. The army suddenly launched an attack from the rear to defeat our army. Master Marquis. Marquis Woodson snorted coldly, disdain, such a poor strategy. It seems that the Aura Angle, who is said to be the Marquis of Kata, is just that. Of course, Austin was charming, not to mention that even the Marquis of Canadian was defeated by Master Marquis. What kind of storm can he set off? A Violet of Angra? John of Vincent raised his chin, looked at his face, and made a loud order. I will give you 40,000 people, start to Union City tomorrow, and go around the city after arriving. No matter how Semi-Elf and the North are seduced, you should not enter the city. Give me the Union City. Don't let go of one soldier and one soldier. I personally led the 60,000 troops and surrounded the black troops hiding outside the city. This time, I want to completely disappear the Black Army on this continent. Followed, Master Marquis. This chapter is finished.